My guest at this time is Ohio Republican Congressman Jim Jordan. He represents the Buckeye State's 4th Congressional District. He's a member of the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees, and he is a candidate for Speaker of the House if Republicans are able to retain control. And Congressman, thanks so much for being with us.
You bet, Greg. Good to be with you.
A lot of people wanted you to run for Speaker a few years ago when John Boehner stepped down. You didn't do it then, so why is now the right time?
Well, I think you step back and look at the progress that's been made under President Trump's leadership, with taxes being cut, regulations reduced, economy growing at this 4.1% growth rate, unemployment at the lowest, Gorsuch on the court, we're out of the Iran deal, the embassies moved to Jerusalem, all kinds of good things. But when then you step back and look at Congress, we certainly help with the tax cuts, and we shouldn't downplay that. But where's the border security wall we promised? Where's the repeal of Obamacare? Where's the welfare reform? Where's defunding Planned Parenthood? Where are those key issues that we told the American people we were going to get done? We haven't completed those. We haven't accomplished those. And so if I'm given the chance to lead, if we keep the majority and I'm given the chance to lead the House, we're going to focus on one simple message: doing what we told the American people we were going to do.
Congressman, what's your explanation for why it didn't get done with the current leadership?
Lack of political will. We had a chance back with that crazy omnibus spending bill. Instead of doing what the swamp always does, which is spend more money on everything and make up excuses for why we can't do what we told the people we were going to do, and more importantly, what they elected us to do, we should have fought on that omnibus spending bill. Remember, Chuck Schumer shut the government down before that, a few months before that. When Chuck Schumer said amnesty was more important than funding our troops, we were well positioned, we were poised, we were right on the cusp of victory, and yet we did what the swamp always does. Now, I didn't vote for it. Conservatives didn't vote for it. The Freedom Caucus didn't vote for it. But we were ready to win and do what needed to be done for national defense, hold the line on the other spending, fund the border security while we were in a position to do that. And yet our leadership didn't do that, and Republicans failed to deliver on the promises we had made. So that's the problem. But it boils down to a simple fact. You've got to be willing to actually engage in the debate and have the fight. You can't just forfeit before the referee even blows the whistle and starts the game.
Oh, I know you made quite a few headlines when you asked members of Congress to vote on the same repeal and replace bill that passed the Congress in 2015, but was obviously vetoed then by President Obama. So I'm assuming if there is a Speaker Jordan in the next couple of years, we're going to see that come back, as well as some of the border security issues you mentioned.
Repeal Obamacare. We promised the voters we were going to do that. They elected us in 10. They elected us at 14. They elected a guy, President of the United States, that everyone said couldn't win. In 2016, they elected us to do just that. They elected us to build the border security wall. They elected us to defund Planned Parenthood. They elected us to also reform welfare and tell able-bodied people in our social services that if you're going to get a taxpayer benefit in the social welfare system, you've got to do something. You've got to be involved in something, some kind of work program in order to get that benefit. And when you put that requirement in place, lots of people just forego the benefit and go out and get a job, which is good for everybody. So those are the things they elected us to do. We haven't got them done. If I'm given the chance to lead, we're going to get them done.
Well, how much head counting have you done? Do you have the votes?
We're focused more on the head count of keeping the majority. Remember what the Democrats want to do, Greg. Democrats are campaigning on, here's their message. You elect Democrats, they're going to raise your taxes, they're going to abolish ICE, they're going to socialize medicine, and they're going to impeach the president. So the main focus right now is on making sure we keep the House. Once we've done that, then we'll focus on the Speaker's race. But look, I'm running, and we're trying to talk to folks all across the country.
We'll get back to the midterms in just a moment. But, sir, as you obviously well know, shortly after you announced your intentions to run for Speaker, allegations surfaced about what you supposedly knew about inappropriate actions by a school doctor while you worked with the Ohio State wrestling program back in the 80s and 90s. Many people from that place and that era came to your defense, and at least some of those accusers then recanted. But what's it like to endure a political and media onslaught like that in an era when so many people immediately believe the accusations are true?
Yeah, well, it's not fun, but everyone sees through this story. My colleagues see through it, and we've had all kinds of every single coach that I coached with at that time has come forward and said the same thing I have. All kinds of athletes, guys who wrestled for us have said the same thing I have. And the reason they've all said that is because it's the truth. So everyone sees through this story. The idea that I would not stand up and defend our athletes. I mean, I've taken on the Speaker of the House for my own state. I've taken on the IRS when they were targeting people. I've taken on the Department of Justice and the FBI for the wrong they did when they took this dossier and took it to a secret court to spy on President Trump's campaign. The idea that I would not stand up for our wrestlers is just ridiculous, and everyone sees through that story.
What do you think was really behind it?
Look, with the press running with it the way they did, that's the press. If you're a conservative, they're out to get you. If you support the president and you're fighting to help the president, particularly in this issue of the Department of Justice, they're out to get you. I mean, never forget, Greg, Twitter shadow banned 4 members of Congress. Now, there are 435 members in the House. There are 100 in the Senate, so 535. Of those 535, 4 were shadow banned by Twitter. Mark Meadows, Devin Nunes, Matt Gaetz, and Jim Jordan. And yet Twitter says, it was a glitch in our algorithm. A glitch in your algorithm? What'd you put in the algorithm? The name Meadows, Nunes, Gaetz, and Jordan? I mean, come on. So the 4 guys who happen to be the 4 most outspoken on what the FBI and DOJ did to the Trump campaign. So this is just what happens when you stand up and fight for the things you told the American people you're going to fight for, and when you're helping the president.
Let's get back to midterms now, Congressman. Many political forecasters expect Democrats to win the House at this point. We just talked with Republican pollster John McLaughlin, who says the party is having a tough time getting anywhere close to the same turnout that Trump got in 2016 and these special elections that we've seen over the past year or so, while Democrats are getting pretty close to their 2016 numbers. So you mentioned a moment ago that Republicans haven't lived up to a lot of their promises over the last few cycles. So how do you get those people who might be disappointed back to the polls and putting Republicans back in charge? And obviously this time you hope with you leading the agenda.
Yeah, you do 2 things. The first is what we just talked about. You do what you said. So we go back in September, we better put the border security wall funding on the spending bill and send that to the Senate. So number 1, most important, do what you said. Number 2, embrace the president. Some of these elections, these special elections, like the special election in Pennsylvania that we lost by a few hundred votes, there was a tremendous drop-off in Trump voters showing up for that special election as compared to the presidential election in 2016. And part of that is because the folks in Washington ran a Washington-focused campaign instead of a President Trump-focused campaign. They should have had President Trump right next to Rick Saccone in every one of those TV ads. This is Western Pennsylvania, for goodness sake. So I think you have to embrace the president. When the president came in the special election in Ohio a couple weeks ago, in the early vote, in the absentee vote, Troy Balderson was losing 64-36. The Saturday before the election, the president comes in, this huge rally in the middle of this district, and Troy Balderson winds up winning that race. After losing the early vote, 64-36, he winds up winning because the president came in. The president won that for Troy Balderson. That's what we have to understand is do what we said and embrace the president because the president is doing what he said.
You mentioned, Congressman, that a lot of the issues that you think the GOP leadership should have done a lot better on, whether it's immigration or spending or Obamacare repeal and that sort of thing. Another issue, of course, that you've been greatly involved in is what you mentioned before with investigating the FBI and the Justice Department over the dossier and the role of our law enforcement and intelligence communities in the 2016 campaign. What do you think, if anything, our current congressional Republican leadership should have done differently in handling that?
I think they should have just pushed harder sooner, and they've pushed some, and I appreciate that. Chairman Nunes has been great, but we should have pushed harder sooner. The foot dragging, the stonewalling that we get from the DOJ is just ridiculous. I mean, they haven't complied with subpoenas, they haven't complied with letters. They're not in compliance right now with a March 22nd subpoena sent from the Judiciary Committee. We've caught them trying to hide information from us, redacting things they had no right to redact. And, of course, there's also the media reports that Rod Rosenstein threatened members, staff members on the House Intelligence Committee for simply trying to do their job. So this is a problem. And then you couple that with what we've learned in the last few weeks. Bruce Orr, top Justice Department official, his wife worked for the firm hired by the Clintons to put together the dossier. Bruce Orr didn't disclose that. And more importantly, we learned 4 weeks ago from Peter Strzok that Bruce Orr was passing the dossier to the FBI. That is never supposed to happen. You can't have a top-ranking Justice Department official, wife working for the other party's campaign-hired firm, giving information to her husband, who's then passing it to the FBI, and they're using that dossier to go to the court to get the warrant to spy on the other campaign. That's what they did. Is as wrong as it gets, and we're going to keep pushing until we get the answers.
Mr. Jordan, what's your level of optimism about retaining control of the House, and will you be running for GOP leader regardless?
I think no one's talking about the running for leader. We're talking about running for speaker because I think we're going to maintain control of the House. That's priority number one. And the best way to do that is, as I said before, get back in September and do what we said.
Well, we'll be watching very carefully. As always, sir, thank you so much for your time. We greatly appreciate it.
You bet, Greg. Take care, brother.
Ohio Republican Congressman Jim Jordan represents his state's 4th Congressional District. He's also a member of the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees and a candidate for Speaker of the House. I'm Greg Columbus reporting for Radio America.